Welcome to Attention Retention with Jackie McManus, your source for the latest trends in transportation recruitment and retention.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Attention Retention. I'm your host, Jackie McManus, CEO and founder of KJ Media, a recruitment advertising agency with a focus on empowering trucking companies to accelerate their hiring and become the employer of choice. Today, we're diving deep into the world of recruitment, retention, and recognition, and I am thrilled to have Corey Teague, Director of Recruiting at Arka Express. Corey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You just posted something recently on LinkedIn, and I really want to share this with the audience. Your accomplishments as the Director of Recruiting at Arka has really been truly remarkable. And just the 3 years, a little over 3 years that you've been with the company, you've netted over 300 drivers and significantly reduced their overall cost per hire. As we know, such achievements are no small task or feat, and we're excited to have you on today and tap into your expertise to share with our audience. But before we dive into the 3 R's, recruitment, retention, and recognition, could you walk us through your journey in becoming the Director of Recruitment at Arka Express?
Yeah, so I've been in this industry, started up in January of 2013. I recruited for some major carriers and learned the ropes, got into management. And then got an opportunity with Arka Express. They were looking to kind of just up their game and understand that they needed assistance in terms of taking Arka to the next level in just overall production. And so we had a conversation. One conversation with their CEO, and he said, "Let's get the deal done today." And it was really quick. It was in the middle of COVID. Got things rolling with them, and then, like I said, they trusted me. They handed me the department, and I said, "Hey, I will build it, and we'll do everything we possibly can to be successful." And that's kind of what we've done is we built a really, really strong department with really good recruiters, a good process, a good connection between operations and recruiting. So the entire company functions really well with that, and then obviously substantial growth, right? I do like to promote that. My team's awesome, but plus 300 net drivers in this market and the craziness that's going on in 3 years is awesome. And I'm really, really, really proud of what we've accomplished so far and continue to do so.
You should be, especially during this market, over the last couple of years. And, now we're historically in a little bit of a down market, but super impressive. So let's dive right in. And I want to start with recruiting with you.
Yeah.
What have you found to be the more successful approaches to attracting and retaining drivers in today's market, but really more importantly, attracting drivers to apply to your company?
Yeah, so the attraction part really comes down to the biggest thing with attracting drivers is making sure that you're honest about stuff like that up front. Yep. The ads need to be honest. Everything needs to be straightforward as simply as possible. I think companies lose sight of that very often. And again, drivers are not into this to be swayed and lied to and cheated out of situations. It's a cost for them to switch jobs. It should be something that they're looking forward to, and they shouldn't be persuaded and pushed into a job, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's the approach I took with Arka is like, I said, listen, let's simplify everything down. We'll be very honest upfront in the beginning. And if drivers like it, then ultimately that's what attracts people to the company, right? So that there's not like this bait and switch, because again, any truck driver you've had on or you've ever talked to has always been baited and switched by a recruiter before. They've been lied to, they've been cheated out of an opportunity that didn't exist, or operations didn't sell it, didn't let recruiting know that the ultimate situation. So the key for me is, if you're going to attract drivers, you got to be honest in advertising, honest across the board. And not everybody wants to do that. Everybody wants to sell up to $100,000 a year, but that's not realistic unless they're a specific kind of driver and they do specific kinds of things. And so let's be realistic on numbers. Let's be honest, because that's the only way you're going to retain people. Is I don't expect to go to a job and be promised a certain salary and then be like, well, actually, because you were late and this one time your pay goes down. It's not fair, and no driver should be treated any differently than we would want to be treated. And so that's kind of the biggest base point that I looked at from a recruiting standpoint is like, listen, let's be as honest as possible. Let's check in with operations on a weekly basis to know what we're selling, and let's give the driver everything they could possibly do to make the best decision for themselves and their families.
I love that. And one word you keep bringing up, and I know when we've talked previously, is, process, right? Yeah. And you mentioned recruiting to operations process. I believe that's something that is often overlooked, and it comes down to, okay, we don't have enough drivers, and it's panic mode where companies become a little bit more reactive. But talk to me more about process and how that's really accelerated the overall hiring for your company now, between recruiting and ops, having a structured process around contacting leads. Believe it or not, a lot of companies don't have that.
Yeah.
And I think you just made a note of that on LinkedIn. So I am taking that a little bit.
Yeah, no, for
managing
sure.
Your flow. I mean, let's talk about process.
Yeah, absolutely. So the process for sure is something that most companies neglect, right? Even ATSs neglect it. In a general sense, is that it's important to have an understanding that your leads are your bread and butter. That's what you're going to convert to applications and convert to hires eventually. But you have to have a process in place where the recruiters are working those leads consistently, and where they are at in the process. And so what I always challenge people on is if you use an ATS, whatever you use for that situation, is look at your work list or look at the drivers that you're working. Every recruiter should be able to answer whatever situation is going on with every single driver, right? So in a review as like a manager, right, coming in and doing that kind of stuff, you should be able to look at what your recruiters are doing, and they should be able to answer to you, okay, well, this person I've already reached out to once. This is why they're in this situation. This driver I've talked to once, but he told me, or he or she told me they were going to fill out an application and I haven't received the application yet. Or this person's waiting on a med card to get returned. So it's about organizing where your leads are at in the process, because otherwise what you do is you treat it like a jungle. You reach out to everybody one time and you're never going to get your bang for your buck. You're never going to convert leads. You're never going to get hires. You're going to sit there and say, I guess we need to spend more money on advertising. I guess we need to ramp up, hire more recruiters, do everything like that. But until there's a process in place, to truly, and everybody's different, right? But you have to look at it and use the tools that are available. Like I said, 10th Street offers great products. Driver Reach has good products, but I'll example work list on 10th Street is something that most people neglect. They do not organize it. Mm-hmm. They don't use statuses that truly capture what's going on with the the leads, because they only care about applications. And if you have to start at the beginning, you spend all the money in the world on leads, and you have to convert them at the top of the funnel, and that's what recruiters can control. And it's vital that you understand your process and how to extrapolate as much as you can out of those leads. And then ultimately, again, there's a leads that's sitting attempting contact, or people have reached out multiple times. What are you doing with those leads? What are you doing to reintegrate that? Because if all you're doing is sending emails and sending a drip thing like that, you're not connecting to those drivers. You're not finding any way to get those ones to convert, and you're just spending money over and over for no accomplishments, and you'll wonder why your budget continues to rise.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely love what you said. Top of funnel. That's a word or phrase that's often overlooked. And that's what we focus on as an advertising agency. And for us, when clients maybe come to us, when they start first working with us, and they're like, we need, we've been spending this with this company, we need to spend X amount. And I say, okay, yeah, let's look at that. But let's also look at who's already in your database. Who are those drivers? Let's reactivate. Let's re-nurture. Let's find out, okay, if they weren't interested a year ago, why? Was it home time? Do you have a different load? Or if it wasn't the right fit for the company, were they just didn't have enough experience? Let's get them back on the board, right? And so, going into this year, it's definitely still a softer market, and we have an election year coming up. But in next year, 2025, it's going to be definitely, the pendulum's going to swing. And so I think during this quote unquote softer freight time, downtime, it's such a great opportunity to look at your processes. If they're not in place, start establishing your processes. That's first and foremost, and look at what's working and where there's areas to improve, because the cost of advertising is only going up. That's all. I remember when I started KJ 11 years ago, cost per lead was like 5 cents. I can tell you it's $4 to $5 now,
Yeah.
right? And so that is something that I think is so strong that and I think one thing, Corey, you really focus on ATS optimization, how to utilize your ATS. Can you walk us through that a little bit for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what it is that you need your ATS to work for you, right? And I think every company I've consulted with companies, I've offered free advice, I've had conversations with other recruiting leaders, and at the end of the day, it's define what your process is, define how you get things done, and then ask your ATS provider to make that easier for you to do, easier to manage, know what you're looking at, build reports that accommodate your needs, and then customize everything so that it works for you and you can answer the questions that your leadership asks you to do, right? And so often I will say this, the ATSs out there are great, and really though, they're only as good as you make them. And the more that you put into these ATSs and you challenge the big players to really make changes on your behalf or bring up ideas and be constructive. Be constructive on the feedback you give them, because at the end of the day, they're a service for you. And the more we can use them to capitalize on optimizing ATS is vitally important. Like, I mean, there's so much it can do. There's so much that you're not getting out of the systems that it's just, again, they want to help you, right? They want to see you succeed, and ultimately a lower cost per hire helps everybody if you're more efficient. But again, most people don't know where to start to ask. I think that's what it is. It's like, define your process, figure it out where things are and where you don't have answers for, because everybody looks at processes. So like in my past life, when I had 10th Street, it was looking at, okay, do we have a bottleneck in the front? Okay, let's fix the bottleneck in the front end. But if there's a bottleneck between processing and getting them to orientation, where is the bottleneck there? So are there specific statuses to areas to look, and are there processes in place to say, hey, this app has sat in this process for this status for so long, like it's not moving forward. So like, let's build that, and then build it around who's viewing it, and make things simple and more efficient, because ultimately almost everybody in the company should have some part in the ATS, some visibility. It should be built around that, so people know what's going on. The notes from the recruiters are then passed on to operations and so on, because there's a lot that gets mixed up in this world. Again, you're talking to a lot of people, and notes are vitally important, but it has to go through the organization. I think that's very key.
Yeah, no, well said. I mean, spot on. And I agree with any system, whether it's a CRM system, an ATS system, the system's only as good as the information that you put in and how to utilize the system. And we always recommend or work on behalf of our clients with the ATS providers to find the best solutions for them. What's your current workflow? What's working, what's not working, where is there a gap, so we can accelerate that hiring process. Because it does come down to, lead to speed. How quickly can you get the driver on the phone and have that conversation with them and see if they're even the right fit? And, I'm a big believer too, if they're not the right fit, let's not put a square in a round hole. Let them know early on, because that will lead to turnover. I have to ask this question with the competitive market in this industry. I mean, I've been in this industry since 2008. We were just talking about 2013. It's always been competitive. How do you differentiate yourself and your company to make you stand out as an attractive employee?
I mean, it's a great question. I think I wish everybody had that. That's that magic sauce that everybody wishes they had.
Yeah.
I think you have to understand where your strengths are, and then understand your weaknesses, and be honest, right? I think that there's enough drivers and people looking for what you have to offer, that if you sell it the right way and you really truly relate to the person you're talking to, this is a very, very simple one-on-one conversation you have with somebody, right? The goal is, what recruiters have to stop doing is trying to convince someone to do something that doesn't fit their lifestyle, right? So, I mean, I've seen situations where a single mother comes in and she has 2 kids at home, and she's running OCR, right, at a past life. And I'm like, she's not going to make it. Like, if we convinced her to give
Right.
up, like we're making her choose a job over family, right? So at the end of the day, it's you have the offerings and you're honest about it, right? So we offer a lot of regional routes, a lot of home weekends. Majority of our drivers get home weekend, right? Unless they want to stay out, right? And so ideally, yes, for some people that does work, and that's really what we boil down to is if that's what you're looking for, we have it for you. We'll be honest about it. We'll be honest about the money you can make. If you like to run and stuff like that. At the end of the day, it's just that we need to stop as a whole, as an industry, trying to convince people that the grass is always greener and that the opportunities are, let's make some sacrifices. Like, we're not making sacrifices as us. We're telling truck drivers to miss their families for 4 months at a time, or, you know what I mean? Like, that's
We're
just
still going home to our family every day. It
doesn't work. And so you got to get to know the people. And I've hired everybody from student trainees getting their CDL for the first time, all the way up to owner operators with like 30 years experience, right? At the end of the day, we're human beings. We got to have conversations, figure out what the needs are, and then find a need that fits in your company. If you don't have that option, okay, let's have conversations. What are you willing to do? Does it match with what we're trying to do? And if it doesn't now, and you're still looking, like I talk to drivers all the time, they're like, I want to be home every other day. Great. I applaud you, and I hope you find that. But if you don't, here's what I have to offer for you. And I would like, again, I can follow up with you in a week or a couple days if you don't feel like you found what you're looking for. Like, at the end of the day, you can be home on the weekends. You can see your kids' games. You can do whatever you got to do, right? If that works for you for the time being. And then again, like, I think we think so hard on retention is vitally important, and I will never argue that. But the point is that at some point, yes, they want to be home every day with their kids or every other day, right? So I am not going to sit there and promise them the world and expect them to stay for 10, 15 years if we can't offer that to them, right? If we can provide something for them early on and they settle in and they have a successful 2, 3, 4, 5 year career with us, that's great, right? Ultimately, if we're that upgrade for us from an OTR company to a regional base home win the weekends, that's an upgrade for them. And then ultimately they can decide, is that the lifestyle they want to choose to be in, or that they want to go something different later on. And that's fine. That ultimately is, we would love to have local opportunities everywhere. So would every other company, right? Again, if you're not honest up front about it, and your goal is not to convince people to do something they don't want to do. There's OTR runners out there. There's long haul guys that love it. They're unicorns. I love them to death. But you can't convince those people. You can't convince people that are not that way to be that. And that's really the simplest way I can put it, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's where the friction comes immediately. And one thing I always recommend, with new clients that come on, very much look at your competitive advantage. Look at your value proposition. Look at, are there certain companies or certain trucking companies where you have a better conversion rate, you have a better value prop. Maybe they're feeder schools. Maybe they hire new grads and they use them for, they work together for 6 months to a year. Your company can hire them on, hyper target them, and make sure your recruiters know what those objections might be and the benefits are working with your company, and really looking at that every 6 months, because the landscape is always changing, but that does come down to the internal company to understanding what does the competitive landscape look like? Where is our value proposition here? How do we get our messaging in front of these people? And that's really where you're going to see a lot of great traction, making sure that messaging, not only on the advertising side, recruiting is speaking the same way, operations, and it kind of funnels all the way through. So, back to your original, P word process.
Yeah.
That's exactly, what we recommend to clients. And it's, a lot of these customers, they have been in business 40, 50, 60 years. And it's not something they really have thought about, but we have found that to be highly effective in recruiting drivers for them.
Yeah, and ultimately it's a story, right? So at Arka Express, you tell the story of what it is. They talk to the drivers, right? Drivers are the best recruiters out there. They run into our drivers. They see our clean trucks. They see interesting things, and then they want to know about us, right? So again, our CEO and owners are former truck drivers themselves. They started this company with 2 trucks, right? So it's not these corporate suits. And I think that is a big selling point that I always say is we're privately held. We're not reporting to the stock
Mm-hmm.
market, it's all about shareholders. It's about drivers, right?
Yeah.
And that's really important. I'm not saying that these publicly traded companies don't do that, but again, you're sitting
It's
in a
just different.
boardroom. There's different things you need to look at in terms of that
Mm-hmm.
versus a company that's privately held, and you understand, hey, our drivers are everything.
Yep. Let's move right on to retention. You brought this up earlier. Could you discuss any unique employee engagement programs or initiatives that you have created, contributed to, or what's going on in-house that has helped retain some of your workforce?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So retention is obviously, I mean, I love recruiting, right? And retention is one of those that big elephant in the room that everybody thinks they can tackle, and magically, it hasn't been tackled for perfectly in this industry, or we wouldn't be hiring as many people as everybody does. But the biggest thing that we did was we looked at it and said, how do we get drivers more involved with our
Mm-hmm.
retention program? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think every company does this. They call it different things. They pull leadership. They call them driver leaders, driver captains, whatever the case is. We formed a National Driver Council leadership group of drivers that either got nominated, put themselves up for nomination. Then we basically met as a executive team to decide on the first batch of like 20 drivers that are our
Okay.
leadership of our company, the voice of the company, the people that speak highly of it, have been here, great safety scores, have done everything that they needed to do. So they check the box across the board. They are what we want Arka to be, right? And we use those drivers to not only understand the hardships and things that are going on with the company. We use them also with our incoming new drivers.
Awesome.
And they like to be involved. They want to talk. They want to give
Sure.
out their cell phone. They want to walk and have other drivers experience the same success that they have. And so I think it's vitally important to have a healthy culture. If you don't have a healthy culture of drivers that believe in your company, they're not going to do that. And you
Mm-hmm.
have to find people that are willing, and it takes some trial and error. We had some people that everything wrote on paper, but they're not that expressive with people. And so ultimately, a person that runs 3,000 miles every week maybe doesn't have the time to
Sure.
truly be advocate for drivers and help a
Mm-hmm.
newcomer through the process. And so, and I've been really happy. I will brag on the fact that we've had 2 NDC captains that are now promoted to our
Woo!
terminal
Amazing.
in Atlanta and Chicago as like training like supervisors and leaders in that way. So they basically were great drivers. They became NDC captains, and then they became employees in the office, which again is great for us because we're putting forward-facing drivers that are literally going to be showing you the ropes, telling you how to run your logs, telling you how to be like them and be that successful in the company out front. Because I think I've always argued this point, and I know company, if you could figure this out, I mean, every company would be gold, but it's about figuring out is how do you get the secret sauce? Because a great driver will be a great driver everywhere. And so
Yes.
the more you can get great drivers in front of your new candidates, the more maybe they can pick up on one item or 2 items that make this person great and why they were so successful with this company. And they'll stay longer. They'll be
Mm-hmm.
successful more. They'll make more money. They'll get home when they want to. Everything will be a smooth transition. And I think that's vitally important, and that's kind of what we've done with the NDC. We meet once a month for virtual
Okay.
calls, and then every 6 months we meet in person up in our company headquarters. We get an all day event. We put it in hotel catering. We have all leadership there: CEO, COO, owners, everybody there all day, meeting with drivers, going over topics, letting them discuss and bring up feedback. Everybody's there listening. There's no meetings like. Everybody's all in on that. Not every company can say that, right? I think companies
No.
look at it and they put someone in charge of the group. Corporate needs to hear, the CEO needs to hear from drivers about what we're doing and how it affects them personally.
Yeah.
And I think that invaluable feedback is huge. And meeting in person is different, obviously, than just talking on the
Absolutely.
phone and getting them there and treating them right, getting them swag and making them feel valued. But also, again, it's invaluable feedback. And the time that we spend not only there, but do team building. We've done go-kart racing. We've done other things like that,
That's
right?
fun.
And
Mhm.
getting the feedback from them in a casual environment, having one-on-one conversations with our CEO, one-on-one conversations with me, one-on-one conversations with our director of safety. We get better because of that. And
Yeah.
like people talk about open door, it's all great, but when when we're busy during the week and you've always got something else keeping you away from it,
Absolutely.
it's not the same as devoting true time to these people and listening to the drivers and understanding this is the only way we get better as a company. And that's, I'm proud to say I'm proud that we've accomplished that and we continue to grow it. And again, I talk to drivers all the time. When I talk to newcomer drivers, I'm like, there's an opportunity, there's growth. You can do that. If that's something you want to do, we want your feedback to get better as a company.
Let me ask you this, Corey. And well said. I'm scribbling a bunch of notes because you're heading home all the grand slams with your points. What would you say to a trucking company out there that, they've been interested in having, these elite drivers, mentoring newer drivers that are coming in? I think what happens sometimes is it can be overwhelming. Where to start, how to make it perfect. Analysis of paralysis is a phrase I use. Sometimes I'm like, just go and figure it out.
Yeah.
What would you say are kind of like the baby steps that you would offer as far as advice to companies that would like to have this type of program?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that even companies consider it, right? I think it's important that we don't treat drivers like we wouldn't. We need to treat drivers way better than we do today. Like, I think that's
Absolutely.
that's the running thing with any driver I talk to, and I think that starts there. But ultimately, what you do is start small and start on topics and be okay with feedback, right? And so it's creating a feedback loop on items. So if you bring up an item, and so you got to start small. You got to start with things that, okay, what can we do better at the terminals? What can we do better with customers, right? Get honest feedback and then close that feedback loop. Because at the end of the day, it's like, for example, we had drivers that didn't have a place to provide feedback on customers, because that's something that people don't look at so much is how poorly, I don't care how good a customer is, if they treat our drivers poorly at
How long
customer
they
sites.
trained at a facility, right? I mean,
Yes, exactly. And so what we've done is we give them an opportunity to build notes into the system so we know what's going on. But then what we do with those notes, if we get an information from a customer or from a driver or multiple drivers that the person was rude at check-in, they didn't offer bathrooms, they kept me there, all this stuff, right? Well, when sales goes to customers, it's great to say it in nuance and say, hey, I got some driver complaints. The difference is our VP of sales, he gets in the truck with the driver. He knows his meeting's going to be a couple, maybe a week out. He gets in with the driver and delivers to that customer with the truck, with the driver, dressed as a driver, right? So he gets firsthand experience about how he was treated and that stuff. And so when you go back to a customer, not only do we know what customers to visit because of our driver's feedback, and then you're then taking leadership to say, hey, let's go ride with them. Let's go deliver a load there. Let's experience that for ourselves. And then when I go talk to the customer, I must say, hey, do you realize what you do to drivers? Because I had firsthand experience. I was a driver there, and you guys, and I was treated this poorly by your staff, and this is what happened. Like, at the end of the day, it's taking driver feedback and doing something with it. And I think everybody can gather feedback. There's great tools out there to ask drivers how they're feeling, how they're doing and stuff. But it's like, how do you close that loop and how do you truly improve your processes and understand? So like, for example, something we didn't think about is drivers ask for dumpsters at our terminal to clean out trailers, empty trailers. Mm-hmm. They wanted them raised up so they could just sweep right into a dumpster. So we got it done, right? And then we let drivers know, thank you so much for the feedback. Or if we have had drivers see other or deliver at a customer and want to get more information, they go to our sales team and we go and try to close customers, because those are the customers that drivers want to have. And the key is to start small, figure out, be open to feedback. I think that's the biggest challenge you face with leadership is you get caught up in these meetings and they get the rundown of it. They're not facing it. They're not hearing it from a direct driver. Like, that's just invaluable feedback. And then do something with it, fill out a loop, and then ultimately provide the feedback back to the drivers that this is what we did. We listened to you guys. We improved our customer base. We put the dumpsters in that you needed to do. We improved the showers. You know what I mean? Like, there's always things you can improve, but if you can't ask and let them feel comfortable in the situation to say, we are asking for feedback. We're committed to this. We're here for you. Like, let's go. Right. And I think, that doesn't happen enough, and that I will gladly say that it's a huge improvement for us, and we see it significantly with drivers. And then again, it's a good selling point for me as on a recruiting basis, because we're doing what we say we're going to do. And if you're going to make a choice in the company, if everything else is all equal, why would you not want to go to a company that listens to drivers?
No, I mean, I think I couldn't agree with you more. In the feedback loop, it's huge. And I've since over the last couple of years, specifically this past 2 to 3, companies now are focusing really heavily on retention. It was recruiting, butts and seats, and retention is keeping it all together, right? If you have anything over 90% turnover, there's some really core, or even 70%, there's some core fundamental issues. And I think as an industry, we've been comfortable with the turnover, where other industries, which we're losing our folks to, would look at 80% turnover and say, no way, what are we going to do to fix that? And so there's so many different platforms out there and programs that can assist with that feedback loop, but it has to come down, as an executive, you're going to hear some things you might not like, and that's okay. I love that the VP of sales basically played undercover boss to the shipper, and worked on that relationship. And that's a big piece too, because even internally, Corey, where you said you can have all the honest conversation from the get-go, you can bring that driver in, you hand them off to dispatch and operations team. But at the end of the day, if the shippers really are, keeping the drivers there too long, rude, unpleasant, they're going to leave because of your clients. So it's a big piece to the pie, and the feedback loop is just critical for retention. And I always say this to clients and folks in the industry: it's okay if you don't have a solution immediately. When it comes down to it, people want to feel valued, they want to feel heard and listened to. So appreciate you saying that. Let's jump right over to recognition, our third R. Let's touch on, I know we've talked a lot, but how do you really cultivate that appreciation within the team, especially when drivers spend a significant amount of time out on the road, right? They're remote, if you will. How do you go about fostering that sense of community, camaraderie within your company?
Yeah, so I think there's plenty of options to do so. I think especially social media is big for drivers. We're not, again, it's something that we need to improve upon in our present facing for everybody, right? But we have a private Facebook group that we do really, really well things on.
That's smart.
Yeah, and so we build a community there. Again, drivers have freedom to lives, get on there. Anybody talks about stuff, and we recognize drivers there. And so what I always do is, if we post things publicly, sometimes I'll share them on the private page. People have comments or anything internally like that. I think it's important to look at that. I think it's important to get feedback and close a loop and get in front of drivers and let them know that we appreciate what they did, even if it's just a pat on the back, that kind of stuff. It's invaluable. Like, I will say that I've worked with a driver for a couple of years here, and he's done lots of good things. And he had some ideas to talk to the COO about, like, a business plan about doing a new different kind of business. I said, that's awesome. Like, you came with a business plan, and you know what I mean? And I made sure that we get time scheduled with the COO to have him have a conversation, walk him through the business plan. And it's a learning experience. We all learn from it, and we can all get better from it. So ultimately that is good. I think that there's always ways to improve internally about sending better messages out about, like, I think there's ways to highlight people that are good at fuel mileage. I think there's things that you can't, that's a challenging part where it's like, you can't always do miles, right? Because I think miles are not always determined by the driver, but the things the driver can control. Let's say we always look at fuel mileage as something that, again, for the most part, a driver can have control over. If you equal out everything for weight and truck and stuff like that, you can look at the top 10, top 20 fuel mileage people. I think that's a good thing. And then again, what we always want to strive for is to continue to promote people up to become NDC captains or recognized leader. We have a Hall of Fame inside our terminal with plaques already, and we have plenty more to go. to recognize the great drivers that do. And then again, we try to recognize them in other ways. If they aren't part of that, but they love the company, we're doing a video shoot.
Yep.
Hey, do you want some free swag and you want to talk
Absolutely.
about the company? Like,
Who doesn't
we'd
want
love to
swag?
have you out there, and any opportunity we get at corporate to take drivers out to lunch and do things like that. It's always important to just recognize them and treat them like human beings. I think if you think about the lifestyle, they're by themselves a lot. And I think that when you have a chance face to face with them, take advantage of everything like that, recognize them for who they are, tell them they did a great job, like look at what they've accomplished. Like when I see top mileage, I try to follow up with the top mileage guys and I say, hey, listen, you realize you're top, like you're top this week. I just try to,
Yeah.
I try to make people feel good about it. Again, I'm proud of everything they've accomplished. I highlight the top referrer. I think last year we had to driver refer like 15 drivers.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so like we're always looking at things like that. We always look to try to do different wraps on trucks, or we're trying to get military. We've done military dog tags on any military veteran. We just try to look at things, and then ultimately it's what drivers want, right? Tell us what would benefit you. What do you think we should do to honor drivers? In regards to that, and then we've done giveaways where we put like, hey, these are top 10 drivers. Let's spin a wheel. The winner gets a brand new truck wrapped, that kind of stuff, so they can recognize that. We've put names on, like we're in the process of putting names on trucks. Like, again, I think ownership of that truck in that moment, having your initials or whatever you're comfortable putting on the side of a truck, I think it's important. I think feeling like you are more than a number. Yeah, there's value to what you do. And I think, again, it's all about treating truck drivers. The stigma is, oh, they're a truck driver. It is, they're professional at what they do. There's professionals in the industry. We need to highlight those people. And we need to get more of them. We need to train people and understand that. That's why I think that's what we're doing, right? Is we're trying to get our leaders of our best drivers. Yes, it sucks to take them out of a truck, but it's better to have more influence on our driving force and understand, how do we get more leaders? How do we get more professional drivers? How do we build that brand? Because I think everybody talks about professional development. There's professional development in trucking, and there should be a process to improve everything like that. And ultimately, you'll see that. And overall, the industry needs to invest in it. And I think that we're at least a start. If people hear this and they make some attempt to do better, then I think that's a win for everybody.
I think spot on. Like, and that's the goal of this podcast, right? Listen, it's a challenging industry. The margins are tight. It's highly competitive. We're all, essentially fishing from the same pot, trying to find innovation. It's a challenge. And that's why we started this podcast almost a year ago. And it's to take folks that are really excelling in the 3 R's and sharing that knowledge, because that knowledge is power. We have some great industry events, but those are annual here and there. And so, the goal with, this podcast is to highlight, give the ideas, get the thoughts going. And I'm a big believer in baby steps, right? We don't have to conquer Rome in one day. Let's just, jump on the airplane, just start thinking about it. And drivers will pick up on that immediately.
Yep.
Let me ask you this. This is, we're wrapping up towards the end of the show, and it's been an honor to have you on. Why should a driver consider a career with Arka Express?
Yeah, so I put it very simply when I talk to drivers. The way we approach things is, we'll be honest with you from day one. The first conversation you have, the conversations you have with recruiting, through orientation, through operations, will be the same. We'll be very honest with you about it. We'll provide you with, again, I'm going to be honest feedback about everything like that. My recruiters usually check, and myself, we check on the specific area you live in and make sure we can deliver weekend home time, right? That's a big part of it. If you're in it for money, then we have opportunities for that. I think we try to listen to what drivers are looking for, and we try to match you up with that. Maybe there's different jobs that we do have and we've grown with, and there's always flexibility on that. So we ultimately look at it like, if you live in an area that there's 3 jobs in, let's try out one. If it doesn't work, there's always flexibility to move along. For us, it's really, like I said, we're honest, straightforward. We're truck driver at heart, like our ownership is. And we had lots of drivers who moved up into different ranks. Just I highlighted the two recent ones, but there's other people that have been in the shop and other roles that have done that and will continue to do so. And I think it's important that we just are try to be as driver focused as possible, and then we try to take feedback and we try to improve a company. It's never going to be perfect, and I'll be honest about that. Right, there's always going to be things that we can do better, and we appreciate the feedback and we actually do something with it. And I think, like I said, our biggest strength that I will say that makes recruiting easier for us and keeps our recruiting costs down is referrals, right? And I think that talk to one of our drivers, right? And they're not fed to do that. Like ultimately they like talk to multiple drivers. So I don't just think it's just one guy trying to sell you on the company, right? We don't sit here with a massive lucrative referral bonus. We have a referral bonus, but the point is like have conversations. Most drivers don't even care about getting that. They're like, hey, I've ran into 3 or 4 of your drivers. They love this company. They do really well. You know what I mean? Like get the feedback, because that's ultimately all we can do. But in the end, with us, we're going to be straightforward, honest with you about the application process as quickly as we can move with you. We don't waste time in orientation. We try to do everything in one day. We try to do a lot of stuff online. We drug test you beforehand. We're not going to sit you in a hotel for 3.5, 4 days, right? What people don't realize is switching a job sucks. It does, and I think on average it costs like $2,000 of lost income because you're waiting for the time.
That's about right.
Yeah. You're waiting for the time to get back started and get a full paycheck in. And so we don't take that lightly. I don't want people to move jobs if they're not confident in what they're doing with us. But again, we like to move as quickly as possible so that, I mean, if you can take a drug test outside your company's terminal and get that all stuff done, and then we'll have you in orientation and get you in and out in a day and get you making money. And I think that's vitally important for us. And it's always about driver feedback. And again, that's what I do. I talk to drivers all the time. They're with us. Or if they leave, I'm like, hey, what could we have done better? Was there anything in the recruiting process we could have got better at? And they're like, listen, be honest about it. Tell us where we're going to run. Tell us the areas. Like, because again, I think the biggest thing is that there's a lot, most recruiters are known as liars. Right.
Unfortunately,
it's unfortunate, but it's also true. And I've heard horror stories, and I believe it. But I think it's important that we are as transparent as possible. You will get drivers that want to work for you because you're transparent, even if the pay is not exactly equal. Because in the end, if you're selling up to a number or you're selling a massive number that not everybody hits, you're being honest, and if they have realistic expectations coming to you, then things usually work out well.
Well said. And I have to say, thank you, Corey. Wealth of knowledge. I feel like you and I could do a mini series on the 3 R's, and I would love to have you back sometime. You just have a wealth of knowledge and you get it, right? And it's all about treating drivers like a human, how we would want to be treated. And that's gone, unfortunately, overlooked. But now companies like yourself and folks like you're making the difference. You're making the impact. So I want to thank you so much for being on our show, Attention Retention, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Remember that the road to success begins with effective recruitment, thoughtful retention, and genuine recognition. Feel free to share this knowledge with your peers and industry colleagues. Your sharing can make a difference. Together, we can empower the industry to thrive. Until next time.